All right, U.S. history. This is notes from Monday. We got a handful of slides, and then you get some time to work on your projects. So last time we talked about Khrushchev. We talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis. We talked about how Khrushchev wasn't taking very good care of his people in Russia. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any clothing. They didn't have any consumer goods. They didn't have much of anything. So they were in pretty bad shape. And so he got replaced by Leonid Brezhnev. So Khrushchev started to reverse the things that Stalin did. He called it de-Stalinization. And Brezhnev came in and he said, nope, we're going back to the way Stalin did things. He dealt with all the intellectuals and dissidents that came back when Khrushchev was there harshly. They started to try and leave again. He increased the nuclear arsenal and weapon stockpile as Khrushchev and Eisenhower had started to work on lessening those things. The grain production in the Soviet Union was still down. Soviets continued to import American grain, and that was one of the things that got Khrushchev ousted. Then between 72 and 79, the United States and the Soviet Union experienced a period of détente, which was improved United States and Soviet Union relations. So the United States and the Soviet Union signed the SALT agreement. SALT stands for Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. They signed two different agreements, one in 72 and then again in 1979. These agreements between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, put a limit on the number of nuclear weapons that each nation could have. Technically, it didn't stop the arms race. It just put a limit on the number. But again, if the United States built some, then the Soviet Union would respond. They'd renegotiate the terms of the agreement, and on it went up until the mid-'80s. So the détente ended in 1979 when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. The reason the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan was because after World War II, Afghanistan was part of their Eastern Bloc countries, and there was a communist government there. Muslims who were native to the region tried to take back their land and install their own government, so the Soviet Union invaded. So the Afghan War in the Soviet Union lasted 10 years, from 79 to 89. Thousands of Soviet soldiers died. It was a very unpopular war in the Soviet Union, very similar to how the United States would fight 30 years later. Unpopular war. Way too many American soldiers died. Not a lot accomplished. But it's one of those things that's what happened. The other thing, there's a couple of other things that happened. It's one of those deals where you may or may not be familiar with the Miracle on Ice when the United States beat the Soviet Union in the 1980 Olympics in the semifinal match. The Soviet Union and the United States were at odds as soon as the Soviet Union went into Afghanistan. And so the Soviet Union just about boycotted those Olympics, so that Miracle on Ice almost never happened. In 1980, the Summer Olympics were in Moscow, and the United States ended up boycotting the Summer Olympics. So there was a whole bunch of things that, as this started to break down, they had a good run for about 6-7 years through the 70s, and when this happened, then their relationships started to break down a little bit. So, Brezhnev died in 82, and a guy by the name of Yuri Andropov became the next Soviet leader. On September 1st of 83, so about a year after he had taken power, a Korean air flight accidentally crossed into Soviet territory. and Soviet fighters shot it down, killing all the people aboard. This caused quite a stink in the international community because the Soviet Union just shot down a commercial jetliner that flew off of course. Andropov died in 1984 and was succeeded by Konstantin Cherenko. In the summer of '84, Cherenko said that the Soviet Union would not participate in the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles as a way to get back at the United States for not participating in the Olympics in Moscow in 1980. And then Cherenko died within about a year of him taking charge. So the Soviet Union had Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev and Brezhnev, and all those guys went for about 10, 15 years. And then you had 3 in a row. So as the United States and the Soviet Union were kind of working through their issues, you switch leaders that often, you're going to have some other issues just with people trying to learn what they're doing. The United States went through 3 presidents during this time. So it was a bit of a mess between the Soviet Union and the United States. And then this guy came on board, Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev took over in '85, and he led the Soviet Union until the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. One of the things that him and Ronald Reagan agreed to was a reduction in arms. So the Soviet Union and the United States were back on decent terms. They were able to negotiate treaties. In 1991, after the Soviet Union had collapsed, the United States and the Soviet Union signed a START agreement. START stands for Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. They agreed to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons in their arsenals. In 2010, the agreement was extended with another treaty labeled New START. There's a nuclear missile on the left being launched out of a bunker. So Gorbachev, when he took over, he had 2 things that two policies that he wanted to institute. One of them was glasnost. Glasnost is openness, so freedom of expression. Again, trying to bring back some of the intellectuals, trying to bring back some of the artists. He eased some of the punishments against his political opponents. Just trying to make it a little bit friendlier, not quite so much you said a bad thing about me, so I'm going to execute you in the street type of Russia. More like, hey, you said a bad thing about me, I'm just going to throw you in jail for 5 years type of Russia. You know, openness. The other thing that Gorbachev instituted was the policy of perestroika. Perestroika is just another word for the Russian word for restructuring, basically. And he was attempting to move the Soviet communist government from a communist economy to more of a capitalistic economy. Up until Gorbachev there, the government still ran all of the businesses. They still owned all of the land. They dictated what was made, how much of it was made. As Gorbachev started coming in and taking over, he tried to loosen those restrictions and let individual business people make and sell things so they could start earning money, so the economy would improve, so the living conditions of the people would improve. Then in 1989, the Soviet Union removed their troops from Afghanistan, also went a long ways to easing tensions between them and the United States. And then in 1990, and it started a little bit before 1990, but the Eastern Bloc, all those countries, Poland and East Germany and all those countries, Czechoslovakia, they started to expressed their desire for independence and freedom from communism. So one of the first ones to break off was the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And you can see right there, there's their border. And the last one for today. Gorbachev served until 1991. The Soviet military and the secret police, because secret police is still around, attempted to overthrow Gorbachev in a coup. There was a planned, coordinated attack on a handful of governmental buildings. There was, talks of tanks rolling down the streets of Moscow. The coup failed, but it just accelerated the collapse of the old Soviet Union. It's one of those deals where as the old people that were in charge and wanted it done a certain way, they made one last attempt to retake the government and have it run in Stalinistic terms and old school communism. And they failed, and so that just kind of sped up. Once that failed, they didn't really have any more people in power to try and affect that change, so it just kind of collapsed after that. All right, that's what we got for today. You have some time right now to work on your projects that are due on Wednesday. We got a couple more days of notes. Projects due Wednesday. Presentations Thursday, Friday. Your final test is next Monday. I will see you tomorrow. All right.